The day my only daughter chose her in-laws over me for the last time, something inside me didn't just crack, it shattered into 1,000 pieces that I knew I'd never put back together the same way again. After everything I sacrificed, everything I built with my own bleeding hands, she looked me in the eye and treated me like I was optional. Disposable. Like I didn't matter. Like 30 years of devotion could be erased with a single dismissive sentence. My name is Regina and I'm 62 years old. Before I tell you what I did with my $10 million villa in Tuscany, the one I bought with money I earned through decades of sleepless nights and silent suffering, I need you to do something for me. Hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and whether loyalty still means a goddamn thing in your family. Because in mine, it died. And I watched it die slowly, painfully, over years of being pushed aside. Let me take you back. Back to when it all began. Back to when I still believed that love and sacrifice were currencies that would be honored and returned. I became a single mother when my daughter Elena was 3 years old. 3. Just a baby, really. Her father walked out without a backward glance, leaving me with a toddler, a mountain of debt, and a one-bedroom apartment that leaked when it rained. I can still hear the sound of water dripping into that metal bucket I kept by the window. Drip. 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 Like a metronome counting down my exhaustion. I worked 3 jobs in those early years. 3. I was a receptionist at a dental office from 6 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon. Then I'd race across town, literally running to catch the bus because I couldn't afford to be late, to work at a retail store from 3 to 9. And on weekends? I cleaned houses. Rich people's houses. I scrubbed their toilets. I polished their marble countertops. I organized their walk-in closets that were bigger than my entire apartment. And you know what? I never complained. Not once. Not to Elena. Not to anyone. Because I had made myself a promise. My daughter would never know poverty the way I knew it. She would never go to bed hungry. She would never wear shoes with holes in them. She would never feel the shame of being the kid whose mother couldn't afford the school trip. I swore on everything sacred that I would give her a better life, even if it killed me. And God, some days it almost did. My family, my parents, my siblings, they all lived in the same city. You'd think they would have helped, right? You'd think they would have stepped up for a young mother drowning in responsibility. But no. My daughter was the one they doted on. The pretty little granddaughter. The niece they'd take to the park on Sunday afternoons and buy ice cream for. They showered her with affection and attention. As for me? I was just Regina. Reliable Regina. Boring Regina. The one who always had her shit together, so she didn't need help. The one who never asked for anything, so they never offered. Do you know what it's like to be invisible in your own family? To watch everyone celebrate your child while treating you like you're just the vessel that delivered her? To be taken for granted so completely that your exhaustion becomes wallpaper, always there, never noticed? But I kept going. I kept working. I kept sacrificing. Because that's what mothers do, right? We swallow our pain. We bury our resentment. We smile and say I'm fine even when we're crumbling inside. Elena was smart. Brilliant, actually. She got into a prestigious university, one of those schools where tuition costs more than most people earn in a year. And somehow, through loans and grants and me working myself to the bone, we made it work. I paid for her education. Every penny. I didn't have a retirement fund. I didn't have savings. I didn't take vacations or buy new clothes or do any of the things normal people do. Everything went to her future. And then came the wedding. Oh God, the wedding. She met Marcus during her final year of university. Marcus, whose family owned half the real estate in the city. Marcus, whose mother wore Chanel suits and whose father played golf with senators. Marcus, whose family looked at me like I was something they'd scraped off their Italian leather shoes. But Elena loved him. And because I loved her, I supported it. I even paid for a significant portion of the wedding. I took out another loan, yes, another one, to help cover the costs because it wouldn't be right for the bride's family not to contribute. Castellanos had already made subtle comments about doing things properly and maintaining standards. So I bled myself dry once again to make sure my daughter wasn't embarrassed by her poor mother. I also helped with the deposit on their first home. Did you hear that? Their first home. While I was still living in that same tiny apartment with the leaky window, I was helping them buy a house in one of the best neighborhoods in the city. And through it all, through the university years, through the engagement, through the wedding planning, I watched the Castellanos work their subtle poison. They never said anything overtly cruel. They were too sophisticated for that. Too polished. But the implications were always there, hovering in the air like expensive perfume that makes you nauseous. Regina, this is imported prosciutto from a specific region in Italy. You probably haven't had it before. Elena tells us you work in retail? How industrious. We simply must take Elena to our summer house in the Hamptons. It's so important for her to experience these things. She's part of our family now. Part of their family. As if she was no longer fully part of mine. And Elena? She started changing. Slowly at first. So slowly I tried to convince myself I was imagining it. She began correcting my grammar. She'd wince when I used the wrong fork at fancy dinners her in-laws hosted. She started suggesting I dress differently, speak differently, be different. She never said the words, "You embarrass me," but I felt them in every gentle correction, every tight smile, every time she positioned herself physically closer to the Castellanos than to me at family gatherings. I thought raising her alone, protecting her, sacrificing everything for her, would make us unbreakable. Mother and daughter against the world. I thought our bond was forged in fire and could withstand anything. I was so fucking wrong. The years passed. I watched my daughter become someone I barely recognized. Someone who valued status over substance. Someone who measured love by the size of your house and the designer label on your handbag. The Castellanos had won. They had taken my daughter, the one I'd raised with my own blood, sweat, and tears, and remade her in their image. But I told myself it was fine. I told myself that as long as she was happy, as long as she was thriving, my sacrifices had been worth it. I swallowed my hurt. I plastered on a smile. I attended their elaborate parties and their exclusive events, always feeling like an outsider in my own daughter's life. Always feeling like I was being tolerated rather than welcomed. I kept my pain quiet. I kept my dignity intact. I pretended everything was okay. Because what else could I do? She was my only daughter. My only child. The only person I had in this world who was supposed to love me unconditionally. The only person I had left. And then came the moment that finally broke me. It was supposed to be the happiest announcement of Elena's life. She and Marcus were renewing their vows for their 10th anniversary. Not just renewing them, creating this elaborate destination celebration in Positano, Italy. A week-long event with their closest family and friends. The Castellanos were planning it, naturally. Sparing no expense. Making it the social event of the season. I remember the day she told me about it. We were having coffee at this trendy cafe she liked, one of those places where a latte costs $12 and the baristas are all aspiring actors. She was glowing, excited, talking rapidly about the venue and the guest list and the activities they had planned. And then she said it. So casually. So matter-of-factly. As if she was commenting on the weather. The thing is, Mom, we're keeping it really intimate. Just immediate family and our closest friends. The Castellanos are handling most of the arrangements since they have the villa in Positano and they know the area so well. It just makes sense for me and Marcus to stay with them before and after the ceremony. You understand, right? I stared at her. Waiting for the part where she told me when my flight was. Waiting for her to say, and of course you'll be staying at this hotel or we've arranged this beautiful room for you. But that part never came. Instead, she kept talking about the Castellanos' villa. About how Sofia Castellano, Marcus's mother, was coordinating everything. About how it was going to be so much easier having everything centered at their place. What about me? I finally asked. My voice sounded strange. Hollow. Where am I staying? She blinked at me. Actually blinked, as if confused by the question. Oh, Mom. The thing is, it's complicated. The villa can only accommodate so many people, and with Marcus's siblings and their families, and our closest friends, it's just really tight. And honestly, with all the pre-ceremony activities and everything happening at the Castellanos' place, it might be better if you came just for the actual ceremony day. You know, to avoid the awkwardness. Awkwardness. That's what I was. An awkwardness to be managed. Elena. I said her name carefully, like I was defusing a bomb. This is your vow renewal. I'm your mother. I raised you by myself. I worked 3 jobs to put you through school. I paid for your wedding. I helped you buy your house. And you're telling me there's no space for me? She had the audacity to look annoyed. Frustrated. Like I was being difficult. Like I was the problem. Mom, don't make this about you. This is about me and Marcus. We want it to be perfect, and honestly, having you there for the whole week would it would be too much. The Castellanos have certain expectations, and I need to respect that. They're Marcus's parents. I have to think about their comfort too. And what about my comfort? I asked. My hands were shaking. I hid them under the table. What about honoring your own mother? Mom, please. Don't be dramatic. You can come for the ceremony. That's what matters, right? The actual vows? Everything else is just logistics. You understand logistics. You've always been so practical. Practical. Yes, that's what I'd always been. Practical Regina, who quietly handles everything. Who never makes a fuss. Who always understands. Who always accommodates everyone else's needs while her own are trampled into dust. The Castellanos will have special seating at the ceremony, she continued, her voice brightening as if this somehow made things better. Sofia and Roberto will be right up front, and they're doing a special tribute moment where Marcus thanks them for their support and guidance. It's going to be really touching. A special tribute. For them. The in-laws who had swooped in after all the hard work was done. After I had already raised her, molded her, sacrificed for her. They would get the honor. The recognition. The moment of gratitude. And me? I will be there for one day. Flying in and out like a distant relative. Like someone whose presence was an obligation rather than a joy. Mom, it's just better this way, Elena said, reaching across the table to pat my hand. Pat it. Like I was a child being soothed. Like I was the one being unreasonable. Don't make it awkward. Please. I just want everything to be perfect. Perfect. Without me in it. I didn't cry. Not there. Not in that overpriced cafe with its reclaimed wood tables and its Edison bulb lighting. I nodded. I smiled. I said, of course, sweetheart, whatever you need. Because that's what I'd been trained to do. That's who I had become. The mother who always says yes. Who always understands. Who never, ever makes waves. I went home that day and I sat in my living room, the same living room I'd sat in for 20 years because I'd never been able to afford anything better, and I looked at the photographs on my walls. Elena as a baby. Elena's first day of school. Elena's graduation. Elena's wedding. My entire life, documented in frames. And I realized something that nearly destroyed me. I had raised a child who forgot who lifted her up. I had given her everything, and she had learned to value everyone but me. She had learned that her mother's love was infinite and free, so it had no value. She had learned that I would always be there, always understanding, always accommodating, so she never had to consider my feelings. Never had to protect my heart the way I had always protected hers. I thought about all those nights I'd gone without sleep. All those meals I'd skipped so she could have new school supplies. All those times I'd smiled through exhaustion and pain and loneliness because I didn't want her to carry the burden of my struggles. I had made myself small so she could be big. I had erased my own needs so hers could be met. And this was my reward. Being told I was too awkward. Too complicated. Too much of an inconvenience to include in a week-long celebration of my own daughter's marriage. The in-laws, the wealthy, sophisticated, emotionally distant in-laws, would be honored and centered and celebrated. And I would get one day. One fucking day. After 30 years of being her entire world. I sat there as the sun set and the room grew dark around me, and I felt something inside me transform. Not break, I'd already been broken so many times. Transform. Harden. Crystallize into something sharp and clear and cold. I thought about the words, "Don't make it awkward." I thought about how I'd spent my entire adult life making myself smaller, quieter, less demanding, so that I wouldn't be a burden to anyone. So that I wouldn't make things awkward. And I realized, I'm done. I am done begging for love in my own family. I am done being grateful for scraps from my own daughter's table. I am done pretending that being treated as optional is the same as being loved. That night, I made myself tea, the expensive kind I usually save for special occasions, and I sat down at my kitchen table. And I started to think. Really think. About my life. About my choices. About what came next. Because here's what nobody tells you about being a devoted mother who sacrifices everything. There comes a moment when you have to decide if you're going to keep sacrificing yourself on an altar where no one is praying. I had always believed that unconditional love meant giving without expectation. And maybe that's true. But I was starting to understand that unconditional love doesn't mean accepting unconditional disrespect. It doesn't mean allowing yourself to be erased. It doesn't mean teaching your children that they can treat you however they want because you'll always forgive, always understand, always accommodate. I went to my bedroom and opened the drawer of my nightstand. Inside was a leather folder, expensive leather, which was unusual for me. I'd bought it years ago to hold important documents. Documents I'd never told anyone about. I pulled out the deed. The deed to my villa in Tuscany. Most people don't know this about me. My family doesn't know. Elena doesn't know. The Castellanos certainly don't know. But about 8 years ago, after decades of careful saving and investing every spare penny I could scrape together, I did something for myself. Something extraordinary. I bought a villa. A beautiful, sprawling, centuries-old villa in the hills of Tuscany, overlooking vineyards and olive groves. It cost me nearly $10 million, money I'd accumulated through years of smart investments, through working every possible hour, through saying no to myself so many times that saying yes felt revolutionary. I had planned it as my retirement dream. The place I would finally rest after a lifetime of struggle. The reward for all those years of sacrifice. I'd visited it twice, just twice, because I was always too busy, always too needed elsewhere. But I'd walked through its rooms and felt something I hadn't felt in decades: peace. Belonging. Home. And according to my will, which I'd drawn up 5 years ago, it was supposed to go to Elena. My only daughter. My only child. Everything I had, the villa, my savings, my retirement accounts, the life insurance policy, all of it was designated for her. Because that's what mothers do, right? We give our children everything. Even after we're gone. I looked at that deed for a long time. I traced my finger over the property description. I thought about those sun-drenched rooms. I thought about the garden with its lemon trees. I thought about the view from the terrace, where you could see for miles and miles, all the way to the ancient towns dotting the hillsides. And then I thought about being told I was too awkward to spend a week celebrating my daughter's marriage. About being given one day. About watching the Castellanos receive tributes and honors while I sat in a chair, quiet and grateful to even be invited. No. No more. That night, I didn't sleep. But for the first time in years, I felt awake. Truly awake. The next morning, I called my lawyer. His name is David, and he's handled my affairs for years. He's a good man. Discreet. Efficient. He's never asked intrusive questions, never judged my choices. David, I said when he answered. My voice was steady. Calm. I need to change my will. Completely. There was a pause. Of course, Regina. Can you give me an overview of what you'd like to change? Everything, I said. I want to change everything. I met with him that afternoon in his downtown office. The same office where I'd signed my original will, where I'd designated Elena as my sole beneficiary, where I'd felt proud and satisfied knowing that even after I was gone, I would still be taking care of my daughter. How naive I'd been. I want the villa to go to my son, I told David. He looked up from his notepad, confused. Your son? Regina, I don't have any record of. Not my biological son, I interrupted. My heart son. Miguel. Let me tell you about Miguel. He's the son I never gave birth to, but who became mine anyway. I met him 15 years ago when he was a scared 19-year-old kid who'd just aged out of the foster care system. He started working at the dental office where I was a receptionist. He was quiet, hard-working, always the first to arrive and the last to leave. He reminded me of myself, that desperate need to prove your worth, to make something of yourself despite every disadvantage. We started talking. Just small conversations at first. Then longer ones. He told me about his childhood, the abuse, the neglect, the series of foster homes where he never quite belonged. He told me about his dreams of going to college, of becoming something more than what his circumstances had dictated. And I helped him. Not in big, dramatic ways. But in the ways that matter. I co-signed his student loan application. I invited him for dinner every Sunday. I proofread his essays. I celebrated his victories and comforted him through his defeats. I showed up for him in all the ways my own family had never shown up for me. He graduated. He became a physical therapist. He got married to a wonderful woman named Sarah. They had 2 children, children who call me Grandma Regina, who race to hug me when I visit, who actually want me around. Miguel never forgot what I did for him. Never. He calls me every week. He visits at least twice a month. When I had surgery 2 years ago, minor surgery, nothing serious, he took time off work to drive me to the hospital and stay with me afterward. He sat by my hospital bed and held my hand and told me stories to make me laugh. Elena didn't visit. She was too busy with a fundraiser the Castellanos were hosting. Miguel, I told David. Miguel Reyes. The villa goes to him. All of it. The property, the contents, everything. David wrote carefully. And your other assets? My retirement accounts, my savings, the life insurance policy, split it. 70% to Miguel. 30% to Elena. I watched David's pen move across the paper. I felt no guilt. No uncertainty. Just a strange, crystalline clarity. Regina, David said gently, I have to ask. Are you sure about this? Disinheritance cases can be. I'm not disinheriting her, I said firmly. She's still getting something. She's getting 30% of my liquid assets. That's hardly nothing. But the villa, the thing I built for myself, the thing that represents everything I am and everything I've overcome, that goes to the son who actually showed up for me. To the one who remembered that love is a verb, not just a noun. David nodded slowly. Would you like to include an explanation? Something to accompany the will? Yes, I said. I want to write a letter. A letter that will be opened with the will. I want them to understand exactly why I made this choice. I spent the next 2 hours writing that letter. I've revised it a dozen times since then, but the core message has never changed. Here's what it says. My dear Elena, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And I need you to understand why things are the way they are. I loved you with every fiber of my being. I sacrificed my youth, my health, my dreams, my comfort, all of it, to give you a better life. I worked 3 jobs. I went without sleep. I skipped meals. I wore the same clothes for years. I lived in a tiny apartment long past when I could have afforded something better, because every extra dollar went to your future. I paid for your education. I paid for your wedding. I helped you buy your first house. I showed up for every milestone, every achievement, every moment of your life that mattered. I was always there. And slowly, year by year, you forgot. You forgot where you came from. You forgot who lifted you up when you couldn't stand on your own. You forgot that your mother's love wasn't just given, it was earned through decades of backbreaking work and silent suffering. You chose people who had everything over the woman who had nothing but gave you everything anyway. You chose wealth and status and social standing over loyalty and sacrifice and genuine love. You made me feel small in your big, important life. You made me feel like an embarrassment. An inconvenience. Something to be managed and minimized. The villa in Tuscany, the one you didn't even know I owned, represents everything I am. It represents survival. Resilience. The refusal to be defeated by circumstances. It represents the part of me that I built alone, without anyone's help, without anyone's recognition. It is the physical manifestation of my strength. And I'm leaving it to Miguel. Not because I don't love you. But because love is not measured by blood alone, it is measured by who stands with you when others walk away. Miguel stood with me. He remembered me. He valued me. He made space for me in his life not out of obligation, but out of genuine affection. You will receive 30% of my other assets. That is still a significant inheritance. But the villa, my heart, my soul, my greatest achievement, goes to the son who treated me like I mattered. I don't write this letter to hurt you. I write it because I need you to understand that actions have consequences. That you cannot treat people as disposable and expect to inherit their love. That being someone's only biological child doesn't give you the right to take their sacrifice for granted. I hope someday you understand. I hope someday you look at your own children, if you have them, and you recognize the echoes of what you did to me. And I hope you choose differently. You will always be my daughter. But Miguel is my heir. Love is not measured by blood. It is measured by presence. By loyalty. By remembering who loved you when you had nothing to offer in return. With love and profound disappointment, Mom. I sealed that letter and gave it to David to file with my will. And then I did something I hadn't done in years. I bought myself a plane ticket to Italy. To my villa. One way. I didn't tell Elena. I didn't tell anyone except Miguel. Mom, he said when I called him. He always calls me Mom. Are you okay? You sound different. I'm better than okay, I told him. I'm going to Italy. To the villa. I think I'm going to stay for a while. The villa? He sounded confused. What villa? I laughed. Actually laughed. Miguel, I have so much to tell you. Can you come over this weekend? Bring Sarah and the kids. I want to show you something. That Saturday, I showed them the deed. I showed them photos of the property. I watched Miguel's face transform from confusion to shock to something that looked like awe. You own this? He whispered, staring at the photos. Mom, this is incredible. Why didn't you ever tell us? Because I was saving it, I said simply. For retirement. For peace. For the life I was going to live after everyone else stopped needing me. Sarah touched my arm gently. And you're going now? I'm going now, I confirmed. And I want you to know something. I've changed my will. The villa goes to you, Miguel. To you and Sarah and your children. It will be yours someday. Your family home in Italy. A place where your children can run through olive groves and learn to make limoncello and grow up understanding beauty and history and legacy. Miguel's eyes filled with tears. Mom, I don't know what to say. This is too much. It's not too much, I said firmly. It's exactly right. You earned this by being present. By showing up. By treating me like a person who matters, not just a resource to be utilized. That kind of love deserves to be honored. He hugged me then. A long, tight hug that said everything words couldn't. Sarah hugged me too, crying openly. The kids climbed onto my lap, chattering excitedly about visiting Italy, about having a grandma house there. This is what family should feel like, I thought. This warmth. This mutual care. This recognition that love flows both ways. I left for Italy 2 weeks later. I didn't make a big announcement. I told Elena I was taking an extended trip. She barely reacted, too focused on her vow renewal planning and the million details that apparently required her constant attention. The flight was long. I don't sleep well on planes. But when we descended through the clouds and I saw the Tuscan countryside spread out below me, the rolling hills, the cypress trees standing like sentinels, the terracotta roofs of ancient villages, something inside me settled. I came home. The villa was exactly as I remembered. More beautiful, even. The caretaker I'd hired years ago had maintained it perfectly. The walls were honey-colored stone, worn smooth by centuries. The shutters were that perfect faded green-blue that only exists in Italy. Lavender grew wild in the garden. The lemon trees were heavy with fruit. I walked through the rooms slowly, touching everything. The cool marble countertops in the kitchen. The wooden beams crossing the ceiling. The fireplace that had warmed families for 400 years. The terrace with its view that made you believe in God just by looking at it. This was mine. I had built this. Not with my hands, I'd hired people for that, but with my will. With my refusal to be broken. With every overtime hour and every sacrificed weekend and every penny I'd invested instead of spent. This villa was the physical proof that I had mattered. That my life had produced something beautiful and lasting. I sat on the terrace that first night, drinking wine from a local vineyard, watching the sun set over the hills, and I felt something I hadn't felt in decades: peace. Pure, uncomplicated peace. No one needed me. No one was disappointed in me. No one was asking me to be smaller or quieter or more convenient. I was just Regina. Just myself. In this place I had earned. In this life I had built. I didn't tell Elena where I was staying. When she called, which wasn't often, I kept things vague. I'm traveling, I'd say. Seeing some sights. Taking time for myself. She never asked for details. Never pressed. Never seemed particularly interested in what I was doing or where I was going or how I was feeling. She was too consumed with her own life, her own plans, her own priorities. Meanwhile, Miguel and Sarah video called me every few days. The kids would press their faces close to the screen, asking to see the house, the garden, the view. Miguel would ask how I was feeling, if I needed anything, if I was happy. I'm so happy, I'd tell him honestly. Happier than I've been in years. You deserve it, Mom, he'd say. And I could tell he meant it. Really meant it. 3 months passed. The vow renewal ceremony approached. Elena sent me the flight information, a ticket for 1 day. Arrive the morning of the ceremony, leave the next afternoon. Barely 24 hours in Italy, and she didn't even know I was already here. I didn't go. I sent a gift, an expensive one, because I'm not petty, and a card with a simple message, wishing you all the happiness you deserve. Mom. She called, furious. Actually angry that I hadn't shown up. Mom, how could you do this? Everyone was asking where you were. It was embarrassing. Embarrassing. I was embarrassed by not being there, but also too awkward to be included in the week of activities. Elena, I said calmly, I'm in Italy. I've been here for 3 months. I have a life here. And I decided that I wasn't interested in flying in for a single day to watch you celebrate a family I'm apparently not really part of. What are you talking about? You're being ridiculous. Where in Italy? Are you near Positano? Why didn't you tell me? I'm in Tuscany, I said. At my villa. Your what? My villa. The one I own. The one I bought years ago. The place I'll probably live for the rest of my life. There was a long silence. I could almost hear her mind working, recalculating, reassessing. You own a villa in Italy? Her voice had changed. Become interested. Greedy, almost. Mom, wow. That's amazing. I had no idea you had that kind of money. There's a lot you don't know about me, Elena. Because you never asked. Another silence. Less comfortable this time. Well, when can we visit? Marcus and I would love to see it. And I'm sure the Castellanos would be fascinated. Sophia is obsessed with Italian real estate. Of course. Of course her first thought was bringing the Castellanos. It's not really set up for visitors right now, I said. Not a lie, but not the whole truth either. Maybe someday. Mom, don't be like that. I'm sorry I hurt your feelings about the ceremony. But you're being oversensitive. I'm your daughter. You should want to share this with me. Should. Obligation. Expectation. Never just genuine interest or care. Always what I should do. What I owed her. Elena, I need to go. Enjoy the rest of your celebration. I hung up. She called back 3 times. I didn't answer. That was 8 months ago. She's called occasionally since then. She's tried to repair things, in her way. But her way involves justifying her choices, explaining why I'm wrong to feel hurt, asking about the villa's value. She doesn't ask how I'm doing. She doesn't ask if I'm lonely or happy or fulfilled. She asks about square footage and property values and whether there's good internet for remote work. Meanwhile, Miguel and Sarah visited last month. They came for 2 weeks. The kids ran through the olive groves and picked lemons and helped me make pasta from scratch. Miguel and I sat on the terrace every evening, talking about everything and nothing. He told me about his patients. I told him about the local market where I buy fresh flowers every Saturday. Sarah and I cooked together, experimenting with regional recipes. It was the family visit I'd always dreamed of. Full of laughter and ease and genuine affection. Full of people who wanted to be there. Who weren't calculating the value of everything they saw. Who just loved me because they loved me. On their last night, Miguel and I sat outside long after everyone else had gone to bed. The stars in Tuscany are incredible, endless and bright and humbling. Mom, Miguel said quietly, Sarah and I have been talking. We want you to know, we would never expect you to leave us this place. It's too much. It's yours. You should enjoy it for as long as you can. It's going to be yours, I said firmly. That's already decided. Legal documents, everything. This villa, this place that represents everything I've overcome, it goes to you. Because you earned it. Not through blood. Through loyalty. He was crying. I realized I was crying too. Elena is my daughter, I continued. I will always love her. But love doesn't mean allowing yourself to be diminished. It doesn't mean accepting crumbs and calling it a feast. She made her choices. She chose status over substance. Wealth over loyalty. The Castellanos over me. And that's her right. But I have rights too. I have the right to honor the people who honored me. She might fight this, Miguel said. The will. She might contest it. Let her, I said. She'll get 30% of everything else. That's not nothing. And she has her husband's family wealth. She'll be fine. But this, I gestured to the villa, the garden, the view, this is for you. For Sarah. For your children. This is for the family who actually showed up. More recently, I've heard through the family grapevine that Elena has been asking questions. Trying to figure out exactly what I own, what my assets are worth. The Castellanos are probably advising her. They're strategic people. They understand wealth in ways I never wanted to. But here's what they don't understand, I don't care anymore. I don't care about their judgment or their scheming or their calculations. I don't care if they think I'm being unfair or vindictive or irrational. Because some betrayals don't need revenge. They just need redirection. I didn't punish my daughter. I didn't cut her off completely or wish her harm. I simply protected the love that protected me. I simply honored loyalty with legacy. There's a particular kind of power in silence. In making decisions quietly and executing them with calm precision. No shouting. No dramatic confrontations. No begging her to see my worth. Just legal documents signed in a lawyer's office. Just a deed transferred to someone who actually valued what I gave them. The Castellanos will be shocked when they eventually find out. They underestimated me so completely. Dismissed me as the poor single mother. The woman who wore discount store clothes to their fancy parties. The woman who didn't know which wine paired with which course. They thought they knew exactly who I was, small, grateful, manageable. They had no idea I was the woman who built a $10 million portfolio through sheer determination. They had no idea that while they were inheriting their wealth, I was creating mine. They had no idea that the woman they looked down on owned more beauty and history and real value than they could even comprehend. And Elena? My daughter? She'll be shocked too. She's been planning her future around an inheritance she assumed was hers by birthright. I've heard her on phone calls, overheard fragments when she doesn't know I'm listening. Talking about when I inherit mom's assets. Making plans. Assuming. Taking it for granted. She has no idea that the villa exists. None. She thinks I live modestly because I have to, not because I chose to for so many years. She thinks my worth is tied up in a retirement account and some savings bonds. She has no concept of what I actually built while she was busy climbing social ladders I never cared about. And when she finds out, when the will is read and she discovers that the crown jewel of my estate, the thing worth more than everything else combined, goes to someone she probably doesn't even remember I'm close with, it will shatter her understanding of reality. She'll realize, probably too late, that she miscalculated. That she treated the wrong person as disposable. That wealth and status aren't the only forms of power. That a mother's love, once squandered, doesn't regenerate infinitely. I imagine her calling me in fury. In confusion. In that entitled anger that comes from having your expectations upended. I imagine her demanding explanations, justifications, changes. And I imagine myself, here on my terrace with the Tuscan sun warming my face, calmly explaining what I've already written in my letter. That love is measured by presence. That loyalty matters. That you cannot treat people as optional and then expect to inherit the best parts of their legacy. Will she understand? I honestly don't know. Part of me hopes she will. Part of me hopes that shock will crack open something in her, some recognition of what she lost, what she threw away. Part of me hopes she'll finally see me. Really see me. Not as the reliable mother who's always there, always understanding, always accommodating. But as a woman with dignity and boundaries and the absolute right to choose who inherits her dreams. But another part of me, the part that's been hurt too many times, knows she probably won't change. She'll feel wronged. She'll tell her friends and her husband and the Castellanos that I was cruel. Unfair. I played favorites. She'll cast herself as the victim in this story, never quite understanding that she wrote the script herself. And that's okay. That's her journey to take or not take. My job isn't to force her enlightenment. My job, my only remaining job, is to protect my peace. To honor my truth. To make sure that when I'm gone, my legacy goes to people who actually valued me while I was alive. I've started writing this all down. My story. Maybe for Miguel's children to read someday. Maybe just for myself. A record of what happened. Of how a mother's unconditional love met a daughter's conditional presence. Of how sacrifice without recognition becomes a wound that never quite heals. I write about the good times too. Because there were good times. Elena as a little girl, laughing on the swings. Elena brought home her first day on a test, so proud. Elena in her wedding dress, looking beautiful and hopeful. Those memories are real. I don't erase them. But I also write about the slow erosion. The small moments that added up to betrayal. The corrections and the embarrassments and the steady pressure to be someone smaller. The feeling of being tolerated instead of treasured. The realization that I had become an obligation rather than a joy. I write about the moment I decided enough was enough. About sitting in my lawyer's office, my hand steady as I signed the new will. About the strange lightness I felt afterward, as if I'd been carrying a weight I didn't even know was there. I will write about Miguel. About how healing it is to be loved simply. To have someone call you just to hear your voice. To have someone remember your birthday without a reminder. To have someone say, "I'm worried about you," when you've been quiet, instead of taking your silence as convenient. I will write about this villa. About how it feels to finally inhabit the life you built. To wake up every morning and look out at the beauty you earned. To drink coffee on a terrace that's yours. To plant flowers in a garden that will outlive you. To exist in a space where every stone and beam represents your refusal to be defeated. Peace isn't given. Sometimes we have to build it ourselves. Sometimes we have to sign it into our will. I turned 63 last month. Miguel and Sarah sent flowers, huge, gorgeous sunflowers that now sit on my kitchen table, impossibly bright. They video called, the whole family singing to me, the kids holding up hand-drawn cards. Miguel had tears in his eyes when he told me he loved me. That he was grateful for me every single day. Elena sent a text. Happy birthday, Mom. Sorry, I'm slammed with work. Talk soon. No call. No card. Just a text sent between meetings, probably while she was thinking about something else. I sat on my terrace that evening, alone but not lonely, and I raised a glass of wine to myself. To survive. To dignity. To the absolute right to choose who gets your heart and who gets your legacy. Some people will listen to this story and think I'm bitter. Cold. Unforgiving. They'll say that family is family, that blood is blood, that a mother should forgive anything. They'll say Elena was just living her life, making her choices, and I should have been more understanding. To those people I say, you've never been erased slowly. You've never been the parent who sacrificed everything only to be treated as an afterthought. You've never felt your child's love curdle into obligation, warm affection cool into tolerance. You've never been told you're too awkward, too much, too inconvenient for your own daughter's celebration. Until you've been dismissed by the person you gave your entire life to, don't tell me about forgiveness. Don't tell me about family loyalty. Don't tell me I should have been more flexible, more understanding, more willing to accept crumbs. I gave 30 years of unconditional love. I gave my youth, my health, my dreams, my comfort. I gave until I had nothing left to give. And when I finally said I need to be valued too, when I finally drew a boundary, when I finally chose to honor the people who honored me, suddenly I'm the villain? No. I reject that narrative completely. I am not bitter. I am awake. I am not cold. I am boundaried. I am not unforgiving. I am protecting the last years of my life from people who demonstrated they don't value them. And here's what I want you to understand, whoever you are watching this, wherever you are in the world, you are allowed to choose yourself. Even if you're a mother. Even if you sacrificed everything. Even if everyone expects you to keep giving forever. You are allowed to say, my love has limits. You are allowed to redirect your legacy toward people who actually showed up. Unconditional love for children doesn't mean unconditional tolerance of their disrespect. It doesn't mean being a doormat with a smile. It doesn't mean pretending you don't have feelings, needs, or dignity that deserves protection. I loved my daughter unconditionally. I still do. But love doesn't mean allowing someone to erase you. Love doesn't mean accepting pain because that's just how they are. Love doesn't mean letting people take and take and take until you're hollow. The villa stays with Miguel. That decision is final. Legal. Unshakable. And every day I wake up here, in this place I earned, I know I made the right choice. Because legacy isn't just about who you're related to. It's about who remembered you were human. Who treated your sacrifices as sacred, not as expected. Who made space for you in their life not out of duty but out of genuine love. Elena will inherit money. She'll be fine financially, especially combined with what she'll get from the Castellanos eventually. But this place, this villa that represents my soul, my strength, my refusal to be broken, this goes to the son who earned it by seeing me. I sleep well here. Every single night. The kind of deep, dreamless sleep that comes from finally living in alignment with your truth. From finally honoring yourself the way you honored others for decades. From finally saying I matter too. There are olive trees on my property that are over 300 years old. 300 years of weathering storms and droughts and seasons of plenty and seasons of want. But they're still here. Still producing fruit. Still standing. I'm like those trees. I weathered everything. I survived everything. And now, in my final years, I'm finally producing fruit for myself. For the people who actually nurtured me back. So here's my message to anyone who's ever been the forgotten parent, the taken-for-granted mother, the one who gave everything and got back indifference. You don't owe anyone your peace. You don't owe anyone access to the best parts of what you built. You don't owe anyone your legacy just because they share your DNA. Build your boundaries. Change your will. Redirect your love and your assets to the people who actually reciprocated them. And don't feel guilty about it. Not for 1 second. Some people will understand. Most won't. That's okay. You're not doing this for their approval. You're doing it because you finally learned that your life, your peace, your legacy, they're yours to direct. And you're going to direct them toward people who actually gave a damn. I'll probably live here for the rest of my life. However many years I have left, 5, 10, 20 if I'm lucky, I'll spend them in this place that represents everything I overcame. I'll tend my garden. I'll drink my wine on the terrace. I'll video call with Miguel's family and watch those beautiful children grow up. I'll write. I'll rest. I'll finally breathe. And when I'm gone, Miguel will inherit this villa. He'll bring his family here. His children will run through the same rooms I walk through now. They'll pick lemons from the same trees. They'll learn about their Grandma Regina who survived everything and built something beautiful out of nothing. And somewhere, Elena will get her 30%. Her money. Her portion. The inheritance she probably still thinks is too small, even though it's more than most people see in a lifetime. And maybe, she'll read my letter. She'll sit with it. She'll feel the weight of what she lost not through my death, but through her choices while I was alive. Maybe she'll understand that the greatest inheritance isn't money or property. It's the regret of realizing you had someone's complete devotion and you squandered it. You treated it as common when it was sacred. You forgot that even unconditional love has a breaking point. Or maybe she won't understand. Maybe she'll stay angry. Maybe she'll tell everyone who'll listen that I was unfair. Maybe the Castellanos will nod sympathetically and privately think I was a bitter old woman who played favorites. And that's fine too. Because I don't need their understanding anymore. I don't need their approval. I don't need anything from anyone who didn't give freely when I needed them. I sit here on my terrace every evening, watching the sun turn the hills gold, and I feel something I never thought I'd feel again, complete. Not because I have everything. But because I finally stopped giving pieces of myself to people who didn't value them. Because I finally redirected my love to people who knew what to do with it. Because I finally chose peace over people-pleasing. The villa is quiet today. The wind moves through the olive trees with that particular rustling sound that only olive trees make. The lemons are ripening. The lavender is in bloom. Everything here is patient and ancient and beautiful. And I'm part of it now. Not just the owner. Part of it. My story is woven into these stones now. The single mother who refused to break. The woman who built something extraordinary out of nothing. The mother who loved fiercely but learned, finally, to love herself too. This is my legacy. Not the money, though that's real. Not the property, though it's beautiful. My legacy is the lesson: you can love your children completely and still choose not to give them everything. You can sacrifice for decades and still decide the final sacrifice won't be your dignity. You can be a devoted mother and still be a woman who knows her worth. Elena is my daughter. I will always love her. But Miguel is my heir. And that distinction, that crucial, painful, liberating distinction, is my final act of self-love. Some betrayals don't need revenge. Just redirection. I didn't destroy my daughter. I didn't curse her or cut her off completely or wish her harm. I simply gave my most precious possession to someone who actually understood its value. To someone who understood my value. That's not cruelty. That's clarity. That's the sound of a woman who finally stopped apologizing for taking up space in her own life. So to anyone watching who's ever felt invisible in their own family, who's ever been taken for granted by people who should have treasured them, who's ever wondered if they're allowed to choose themselves after decades of choosing everyone else, yes. Yes, you are allowed. You are allowed to redirect your love. You are allowed to change your will. You are allowed to give your legacy to the people who actually earned it through loyalty and presence and genuine care. You don't need to fight for a seat at their table. Build your own table. Fill it with people who actually want to be there. And give them everything, the love, the legacy, the beautiful villa in Tuscany that represents your refusal to be broken. Peace isn't given to us. Sometimes we have to build it ourselves, stone by stone, boundary by boundary, legal document by legal document. Sometimes we have to sign our peace into our will and wait, calmly, for the day when our choices speak louder than any words we could have said. I'm Regina. I'm 63 years old. My daughter chose her in-laws over me. And I chose peace over pain. I chose loyalty over blood. I chose the son who remembered I was human over the daughter who forgot I had feelings. And every single day, in this villa that I earned and Miguel will inherit, I know I made the right choice. The only choice that honored the woman who survived everything to build this life. This is my story. This is my truth. This is my peace, signed and sealed and waiting to be executed. And I have never slept better in my entire life.